Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get underway, I have a few administrative items just to cover. First off, the fire exit is located to your left. In the event of a fire, you will be notified by an announcement. If notified, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the exit. Do not use the elevators. Use either the north or the south stairs to leave the building. The meetings are being recorded by our secretary, tonight it's Donna, for the purpose of a record and minutes. So when you come to the microphone, please identify yourself each time and speak into the microphone at the podium. We follow the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. There are extra copies of the agenda on the table near the door. Once the case has been called, the applicant or their representative should come to the podium, identify himself or herself, state their address, then pause a moment, raise their right hand to be sworn, and then present their case. During the presentation of the application, the zoning board members have an opportunity to engage in discussion or questions with the applicant. And as long as that continues, once that stops, then we open it up to public input. Anyone wishing to speak to the board regarding the application should come to the podium, identify themselves along with their address, and then direct their questions and comments to the board. We have three categories of public input that have been identified. The first is those who wish to speak in favor of the application, and we take them first. If you're in favor and there's more than one of you, please line up on the side wall, the west wall there, by the door so that we can get through that portion quickly. Then we open it up to those who wish to speak in opposition to the application and follow the same procedure. Come to the podium, speak into the microphone with your name and your address, directing questions and comments to the board. The last portion of the public input is, the last category I should say, is those who are neither in favor nor opposed to the application but wish to speak to the board or have comments about some aspect of the application that they want to share with us. Once those three categories have been completed, then we give the applicant the opportunity to address anything that was rose during the public input portion, and once that's completed, the public hearing will be closed and we'll continue on to the next case. As I said, during the public input portion, it's not an opportunity to engage in a discussion with the applicant. All comments and questions are directed to the board. Once all the cases have been heard, the board will take a short recess and then we will return to deliberate each case in the order of applicants that are still present. No further input is allowed at that point unless it's solicited and expressly requested by the board, but you're welcome to stay and listen to the deliberation. If you wish to leave, you can find out the results by calling the Planning and Zoning Department tomorrow morning after 9 a.m., or you can catch us on cable up in the 1300s. I'm told we're up there now somewhere. So, having said that, we'll open it up to the first. First off, before we get underway, I want to congratulate our attorney, Mr. Brennan, on the birth of his daughter. Thank you.
ZB 2020-0101. Upon the matter request by T.Y. Lynn, acting as agent for Animal Service League, Inc., for an area variance to construct a 620 square foot storage building with less than required side setback on premises 10 Dubelweiss Lane in an M manufacturing district.
Good evening. My name is Robert Kiefer. I'm a professional engineer with T.Y. Lynn. Our offices are 255 East Avenue, and I'm here this evening representing the Animal Service League in this application.
If you'd raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
The Animal Service League is a nonprofit organization which provides shelter for homeless animals. They're located at 10 Dubelweiss. Dubelweiss Lane is undedicated private drive that comes off of Ridge Road on the west end of what it was the Plaza property. And immediately to the west of the Animal Service League is the Irondequoit Mall property, and to the north are other M Manufacturing operations, and to the south is single-family residential. The Animal Service League is a nonprofit. They provide very humane shelter for cats and dogs, primarily cats, occasionally other animals like rabbits and so forth. They're known for their humane treatment in that they do not put down any of the animals, and they house the animals in non-cage situations. The operation is by appointment essentially only, so there's not a lot of traffic in and out of this site, and I think they've been demonstrated that they've been very good neighbors. There seems to be an unending need for shelter for homeless animals, and the Animal Service League has a continuing need to improve its efficiencies and to be able to deal with more animals. And in that regard, they would like to be able to build a storage building on their site by moving some of the animal cages and food and products that are used to support the animals to a building outside of their main building. That would free up space inside the building so that they could take care of and more efficiently deal with additional animals. The site was selected because it was the most efficient location in our estimation as to where to place this building. Placing it as we propose at this location right here, this being north, this being West Lane, this being the principal structure, the setback from the corner of the building to the property line to the south.
Bob, can you take the mic from the gentleman?
Are we operational here?
We are.
As I was saying, this is the principal structure. The building that we're proposing to build is 20 by 31, 620 square feet. It would be located at this location. It is within the 50-foot setback from the south property line to the single-family residential properties to the south. So this distance would be 30.2 feet where 50 is required by code. It is possible to build this building within the setbacks and not require a variance. This being the setback to the south, this being the setback to the east, it would be possible to put this building in this area or in this area and not require a variance. However, it impacts the efficiency of the operation of the facility, and there are plans, potential plans for the expansion of the building at some later date, potentially in this area. This is existing pavement. This is the snow storage area. This is lawn area. And this is the area where dogs are allowed to run. They like the idea that there's an unobstructed view to this area from within inside the building. This is a gate that operates to prevent people from getting into the rear parking lot area and for animals to get out, but it makes it very easy access for deliveries to be made to this building. Along the south property line, there is mature vegetation. A number of years ago, when the Animal Service League took over from Spatola Party House, they just constructed a fence along this property, but they moved this fence inland so that they could keep all of the trees along the property line. So this is heavily buffered with vegetation, and then this line is also buffered by a 6-foot-high vinyl solid fence. This building would have no heat or plumbing. It will have electric. The activity inside it would be entirely for storage. There would no one be working out of this area. Animals would not be housed there. And it would have very little activity associated with it, no noise and so forth. I would be happy to try to answer any additional questions that you might have with regards to this application.
Does anyone have any questions? We don't seem to have any questions tonight.
Thank you.
So we'll open it up to public input. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone who'd like to talk to us about storage sheds, rescuing animals, or anything along those lines? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to this matter. Move on to the next matter on our agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
ZB 2020-01-2, upon the matter of request by Bergman Associates, acting as agent for Rochester Management, Inc., for area variances to construct a three-story, 80-unit multifamily senior housing complex with site-related improvements, with less than required parking and exceeding maximum permitted height on a portion of premises 2590 and 2662 Culver Road, proposed Lot 2 in an R5 residential district.
Good evening. My name is Andy Hart with Bergman Associates, here representing RMI. Our address is 280 East Broad Street, Rochester, New York.
And if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Before we get underway, because I see there's a number of people here who I imagine will want to speak later, I just want to clarify exactly what it is that's in front of our board tonight. We have in front of us two requests for variances. One relates to the number of parking spaces that would be at the facility, and the other relates to the height of the building that is proposed to be put at the site. Any other aspects of the project aside from those two things are not before us. I understand this matter has been heard once by the planning board and will be heard again by the planning board. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And the town board, I understand, has already determined that this type of use is appropriate at this parcel. So those issues are not before us tonight, and I would ask during the public input portion that you try and tailor your remarks to those two issues, the number of parking spaces and the height of the building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as you did mention, RMI is requesting two variances. One to reduce parking. The required parking for this project would be two spaces per unit. There's 80 units, so the required parking per code is 160 spaces. The applicant's asking for 68 parking spaces. That is a decrease of 58% of the parking required. The second one is for a building height reduction or increase. The maximum height allowed by code is 30 feet. We're asking for 39 feet, and this is a 30% increase in the overall height of the structure. We did supply the board arguments on the 5 arguments that are requested by every applicant. I can go through those. Basically, based for just the parking reduction first, we feel that this parking reduction, should the project go forward, would actually not be would actually be a benefit to the neighborhood, as it'd be less pavement area associated with the proposed project, reducing stormwater mitigation and enhancing the aesthetic nature of the proposed project. We feel the building height has a gable roof, is proposed for the project. It's a 3-story building. The gable roof proposed mimics the types of houses they have in the neighborhood, with gable type roofs. So that's the proposal that we're going with in terms of the building height itself. There's also vegetation planned to be planted along the southern edge of the border of the property, as well as maintaining as much of the existing vegetation as possible to help mitigate the views into the parcel from the neighboring parcels to the south. The 68 parking spaces being provided was based on a parking study analysis that was done by the applicant. Of the 80 units proposed, approximately half have been set aside to support housing for what they call frail elderly. Based upon the applicant's experience at their other facilities, this population of people do not drive or own a car, and would not have a need for a parking space. The proposed facility will also have a maximum of 4 staff members, Monday through Friday, with the potential for 2 aides. So that's 6 employees at any one time max. A recent study they've done at a Calkins Corners facility and the Cobbs Hill Village facility, both independent senior communities without supportive units, showed utilization of parking was very low at about 60 to 68%, even at peak times, including both employees, visitors, and aides. So this shows that even a more active community has less need for parking. So that they did find that the residents living in the 38 supportive housing units will not drive, and the remaining 42 units that we're proposing, only 68 of those will have an automobile. So that we come up with a number of 58 parking spaces required. We went ahead and added 10 more just to be safe, so we're proposing the 68 based on that. In terms of the building height, we're reducing the height of the project in terms of altering a solution or trying to find another way to do this without a variance. The only other way to do this, providing 80 units, which is what the applicant needs to make their financials work based on revenue based on construction costs. The only way to make that work would be to have a 2-story unit and spread out the building larger on the pad of the site. Unfortunately, this site, though, has some site constraints to it, steep slopes to the north, and 2 easements on east and west edges, so we're not able to spread that building out and make it shorter. So we're showing that as a constraint. So considering whether the area variance will have an adverse effect on physical or environmental conditions, we feel constructing more parking than what the applicant needs would actually be a detriment to the community, so we don't want to propose that and propose only the amount of spaces we need so that we can provide as much green space as possible. The increase in building height, we feel, will not have an adverse physical effect on the neighborhood. The building will be located on a parcel of land that sits between the neighborhoods and the highway to the north. We feel this building would actually act as a benefit, as a buffer to that highway and that noise, providing a benefit to the neighborhood to the south. Is the situation self-created? A reduction in the required parking is self-created in an attempt to reduce the amount of construction of impervious area on site, as we stated before, and provide unnecessary pavement and loss of green space. In terms of the building height, it is partially self-created with contributing site factors that limit the ability to increase the building footprint, including the interceptor tunnel that's to the east of the site and the sanitary sewer to the west. So we're not able to spread that building out. And that's all I have.
Any questions from the board? So if I understand you correctly, what you've done is you've put in the minimal amount that you need in order to make the project financially viable, using the available space and preserving as much green space as possible. Is that
Correct.
summing it up in a nutshell?
Yes.
Can you walk through your diagram, please?
Sure. So the diagram that we're holding up here shows the proposed site plan for the project. Access to the site will come from Culver Road. We don't show it all the way out to Culver, but Culver's about here. So we build a new road on the south edge of our parcel to access the proposed property. This is the eastern portion of the Wambach parcel, the eastern roughly 7 acres of land that sit to the east. That's what RMI would purchase from Wambach. Our building is located in the northeast corner of the site. To the north are those steep slopes and conditioned soil that we can't really build on. To our east is that tunnel that sits right here. And then there's a sanitary sewer easement that the town owns that sits right here. So we've kind of placed that building in an L-shaped fashion to fit within that parcel. In terms of access, it does come from Culver Road. There is a main drop-off at the front of the site. We've put parking in 3 separate lots that are surrounded with landscaping to try to reduce the effect of having too much parking in one spot, to create more vegetation around the landscape, around the parking lot, create more landscaping. There will be emergency access we're proposing and working with the fire department off Carl Sam Drive, which would be here, and that would be only during emergency purposes. So it wouldn't be all the time. That's roughly the site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. How far in off Culver Road is the building approximately?
I don't have the exact figure, but it's 1,000 feet or more. I can get you the exact figure if you'd like.
Just looking at it, I thought it was in.
It's pretty far back, yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll open it up to the public input portion of the hearing. All those who wish to speak in favor of the application, please come forward and line up at the side. Seeing none, we'll open it up to those who wish to speak in opposition to the application.
Good evening, board members. My name is Bob Finocchio. I live at 303 Carl Sam Drive. My house butts right up against where they want to put this building. The gate that they want to put up for an emergency gate is right on my driveway, right there. How are they going to plow snow? There's no place to plow snow. It's a dead end right there. So I don't know how they're going to get the snow out of there, for one thing. Second of all, this proposal for a 3-story building is ludicrous in a residential neighborhood. This is all Carl Sam Drive, Whitlock Road, and they're putting it 1,300 feet down Culver Road in this spot. If they wanted to do it right, make it 2 stories, bring it up to the front of Wambox, that's for sale too, and do it the right way. This is just trying to put 5 pounds of flour in a 3-pound bag. That's what they're trying to do. And I don't understand why they even gave them the R5 zoning, but that's another story. Also, 3 stories for senior citizens, that half of them will be on walkers. And if there was a fire to break out 3 stories and they couldn't use the elevators, I'd hate to see what would happen with these people going down that stairway, trying to get down the stairway from a fire. I don't think it's a good thing. I really don't. And I hope the town board realizes this and does not grant these variances. There's other ways to do this project. It was said that it's hard for neighbors to change their ways. We don't mind changing our ways. We would love to see a street go down there, townhouses, small little houses for elder people. We don't need another senior citizen, low income. We got 5 on Culver Road now, and we got Pathstone building another one at the mall. I don't think we need this, I really don't. And I hope you see the same thing I see.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Patricia Fagan. I live at 310 Carl Sam Drive. I'm going to show you where my house is. So my house is here. So I'm right in the back of the property. Mr. Finocchio lives here with this beautiful pool. I feel that the 3-story unit will greatly impact directly my house, Mr. Finocchio's house, but this whole neighborhood. These houses right here, this is a cul-de-sac. So they all back up to that. And we see we have vegetated stormwater management area. That's like a swamp. So that's a mosquito infestation. My yard is right there. They can't build enough trees to stop mosquitoes from coming into my area from a swamp, a retaining pond that they're putting behind here. The three-story unit, there's not trees that are high enough that'll block my view of that from my yard. The gentleman talked about noise, how this three-story building is going to block the noise from the 104. I don't think so, because the 104 is here. This is my house. You know, these houses over here, perhaps, but what about the noise that this unit is going to produce, the 3 stories, with AC units, with generators on the roof? This unit has to have generators. It's got to have generators. These generators will go off weekly, I'm sure, because that's what generators do. What about the fans in this unit? What about the lawn maintenance for this unit? And the noise that impacts directly with my house. I do not have central air. So my windows are open in the summertime, in the spring and summer. So this noise from this 3-story unit will directly impact my house and our neighborhood. And as you can see, all the people that are here that are opposed versus the people that are in favor of. There's never been at any of these meetings anyone that's been in favor of this project through the other meetings. So I'll just say that as well. And I feel like, why are we here to give our say in this, and this is our neighborhood, if no one's going to listen to us? So regarding noise, I think that this property will give off more noise than the 104. And the 3-story unit is greatly going to impact my enjoyment of my backyard, which is now like a park. Okay, do you have any questions for me?
Anyone have any questions? No? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Karen Cagnina, and I live at 370 Carl Sam Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. You're now the 3rd board that neighbors and other residents have appeared before. I will tell you all the same things that we've told the previous town and planning boards. We, the residents, still remain adamantly opposed to the rezoning of the back parcel to R5 multifamily and the proposed monstrous 3-story low-income senior housing complex at the Wambach Farm location 2590 Culver Road. We cited many reasons and concerns in support of our opposition to this rezoning project and proposed project. In addition to that, we presented hundreds of signatures on petitions, and not one resident came forward in favor of this project. And I don't know if this board is aware of any of that. Sadly, Dave Seeley and others have ignored our voices and decided, despite all opposition, voted to approve the rezoning at the Wambach property and possibly approve this proposed housing project. And why would the town officials rezone a 14-acre parcel without knowing what will reside there? Especially since Wambach seems to be dividing the property up. Rochester Management mentioned that the only parcel that was available to them was that back parcel, that 6 acres. So what can and cannot go on that remaining land? It was mentioned by a neighbor at the planning board meeting that this seemed backwards to rezone before you even know it's going to occupy that land. So why would you blindly rezone something and leave that parcel of land vulnerable? Unless, of course, you already know exactly what is coming down the pike and what you've already maybe secretly approved. A big question, and we would really like some answers to this, is how does this rezoning and this proposed project benefit the town, and how does it benefit the neighbors and the residents as a whole for the town of Arundequite? Yes? No? Crickets?
Like I said at the beginning of this public hearing, the issues in front of us are the height of the building and the number of parking spaces.
Right.
The town board, whether you like it or not, and I know you don't, and I
Right.
know everybody here doesn't,
Correct.
they made a decision. This housing project is allowed on that property,
So
in
the
one form or another.
The proposed project has been approved then? Is that
No.
what you're telling us?
No, what I'm telling you is that this use is allowed in the R5 district that the town board rezoned.
Okay.
So this use, the idea of a senior housing project is totally within the code as rezoned.
Right.
The issue before us is whether it's 2 stories or 3, and whether there's 68 parking spaces or more. Those are the issues in front of us.
Okay.
The planning board has to approve the concept and the site plan and the location of those things. We don't approve that. Our issue is, can they go 3 stories and can they go 68 spaces? And the factors that we have to consider in doing that are 5. The possible change to the neighborhood character, the alternatives that do not require a variance, the substantiality of the request, the effect on the physical or environmental conditions if granted, and whether the situation is self-created. Those are the factors that we have to take into account in determining whether or not they can go 3 stories instead of 2, and whether or not they can have 68 parking spaces instead of more. Those are the factors that we have to consider. Where the building is located is not for us to determine. Whether this kind of project will be allowed on that property has already been determined by the town board. We don't have any ability or authority to change it, or if we disagree with it, to say, well, we don't agree with it, and therefore, we're not going to grant
So
any
in other words,
variances.
you're not going to answer the question.
Well, you're asking me a question that's not in front of this board.
Okay, well, it would be nice if the residents knew what we came here tonight to do.
Well, I believe it was published that it was
All that you
advertised
just
that it was
said-
for.
All that you just said was not on that postcard.
Well, what it said in the ad that was published, it may not have been on the postcard, I haven't seen a postcard, was that it was a request by Bergman Associates, acting as agent for Rochester Management, Inc., for area variances to construct a new 3-story, 80-unit, multifamily senior housing complex with site-related improvements with less than required parking and exceeding maximum permitted height on a portion of premises 2590 and 2662 Culver Road, proposed Lot 2, in an R5 residential district. That's what was advertised, that's what's before us, and I understand that you don't like the concept, and I can appreciate that, but that's not before us. Whether we like it or not, we have to apply those factors and make a determination.
Okay.
And can I also just clarify for the record, for the public here in the room and also anybody watching at home, the only portion of land that the town board rezoned was the portion for R5 that's associated with this particular proposed development project. The remainder of the Wambach property
what it was.
is still R1, and so a separate rezoning application, if one were to be needed, would need to be advanced for development that exceeded what's allowed under R1.
Okay, and that's great, but it would be nice if we had that information.
That was expressed during the town board. It'll be expressed on the updated zoning map, but that's all pending, so with that, the map will be
Very
updated.
blindsided by a lot of the information. This is the third board that I've stood before regarding this whole project. So we're coming into this blind. We don't understand. Normally, everybody just sits there and stares at us when we're asking questions without answering anything. They don't even so much as ask us a question.
So public input or public comment during public hearing is for members of the community, the public, residents, interested parties, anybody who's
Just to speak.
just to speak and provide the board with
An
input.
opportunity to bring everyone to the table so that we can ask questions, get answers, be
You can
asked
come to,
questions.
you can come to the planning and zoning office, and I make myself available. Michelle Nichols, Donna Martello, planning staff are happy to walk you through the review process and what each step is associated with.
Because we don't really know what we can and cannot ask half the time. We're, like I said, we come into this blind, and it seems like everybody is moving forward with a project that we adamantly oppose, but we don't know whether it's been approved, not approved. They come up and they're showing you exactly what they want to do. We're in the dark about all of this.
So
Why are we fighting?
all of the
losing-
plans are available on, they're available in our office. Anybody who wants to see the most updated plans or receive a copy of those, we are happy, staff can provide them via email. If you need a printed copy, these are large format plans, so copying costs would need to be incurred, but
Well, seeing the plans doesn't really apply because we don't want the project. So that point is moot. Okay? Why don't I just continue with what I had
Please do.
to say? Thank you. What more can we do to save this area from traffic, additional traffic in an already horrible traffic area? What more can we do to save this town from yet another low-income housing development? What more can we do to save our quiet neighborhood from this three-story monster from coming into our backyards? As I just mentioned, there has not been one resident that has stepped forward to be heard in favor of this project at any town meeting. I would like to respond to Rochester Management's comments from December 23rd. They stated, and I quote, "All I can say is we are really committed to seeing this through," end quote. Well, we are here to say we are committed to seeing that this highly opposed project does not go through. They also said, and I quote, "Really, what brought us to this site was the recognition that we see and hear of waiting lists across the board. We have the waiting lists of even in Arundequite of seniors that need housing," end quote. Well, I say prove it. Rochester Management also stated something along the lines of seniors need an affordable place to age in place. Well, that's exactly what we want. We don't want to leave our houses, we do not want to leave our neighborhood, and we don't want to leave our town. And lastly, Rochester Management said, and I quote again, "I know that change is scary and hard, but I know that this is something that really should be done," end quote. This is not really what Rochester Management's concerns about. They're not concerned about aging seniors, it's not about affordable housing, and it's not about aging in place. It's not even about waiting lists. This is about money, big money. Thanks.
My name is Patricia Carroll, and I live at 1136 Whitlock Road. So everything that everybody else said, I don't want to reiterate, because I had a whole bunch of different stuff I was going to say, and I'll spare you what you've already heard, but it's all what we all feel. And we did have a petition of over 300 people that we don't know what happened to that, and it was something that we all worked very hard on. And there's a whole lot of people that are not here tonight that would like to be here, but they can't. So, based on what you said, and I listened very carefully to what you said and your criteria was, so I'm going to give you a couple different ideas of what I have to say as far as the height. Most of the homes in that area are either ranches or split levels. They're low. There's no big, huge houses there. There's no big monstrosities there. They're pretty much ranches and split levels. 3 stories is gonna just stick out in that comfortable neighborhood that we live in. That it's just gonna be, you know, you're gonna see it. No, you can't hide it. The other thing is the in and out traffic that goes there. Now, the people on the front end of Whitlock, they're gonna have a road, a street in front of them, and then they're gonna have a street behind them. So they're gonna be kind of like in a moat to all of a sudden, they're trapped inside of where they live. And it's not gonna stop the noise that, we all have to say, you do hear noise from the expressway. I don't care where you are, somebody lives near a busy street or an expressway or whatever, you do hear the noise. So the noise from that building itself, you know, it will not stop the noise. And then you don't know what's gonna go in the front of the property. So how big will that be? What's gonna happen? It's just gonna be like a terrible, humongous, big eyesore right on Culver Road there. So without knowing what's going in the front, you're putting something in the back. And, you know, there's people that we see in the area and they say they're doing a survey and they said, oh, well, it's a done deal. Okay, I don't know who these people are that are saying that, but if there's something that's going on, then I think everybody's wasting our time, your time. Just say that they're gonna get what they want at our expense. We've got a comfortable, nice little neighborhood that we're all growing old in our own homes. And we like our neighborhood. If we have to sell our homes, the value is gonna be less. People will have to pay less taxes, and they're not gonna be established families that live there now. So, you know, as you could tell, we're all very heated up about this, and we're just trying to be fair to everybody in our neighborhood. We just don't need this eyesore to ruin our little homes. Thank you. I think that was that.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone else who'd like to speak to the application that's neither in favor or opposed? Yeah, I will. Then step right up.
My name's Robert Dates, 40 Delta Terrace. I don't even live in your neighborhood, but this is what's so silly. You're proposing a 3-story senior citizen complex in an emergency when tonight we can't even use the elevator here. How are you gonna get them out? 3 stories of senior citizen with 4 staffers on hand? I think you got your answer. I don't wanna get them out of there.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that wishes to speak to the application, neither in favor or opposed? Then we'll close that portion of the public input portion, and I'll invite the applicant to come forward to address any of the points that were raised during the public input portion of the hearing.
Hi, good evening. I neglected to say that I did bring some folks with me. One of them is the architect. His name's Dan Gladding, right behind me. He can answer questions related to the building height.
All right.
And Peggy Hill is also here from RMI, and she could answer questions in terms of the need for this facility.
All right, so if you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
My name is Dan Gladding. I live at 149 Gregory Hill Road in the city of Rochester. Thank you. To your point earlier, what we heard to talk about parking and building height, one of the comments I heard specific to building height was a concern for people's safety, a 3-story building with seniors living in it. Our ethical obligation as architects and the building code both require that we think about human life and safety in any building we design. And in any residential building, the first thing we're doing is building in a level of fire safety around everything we build so that any fire is compartmentalized and reduces its ability to spread. The second thing we do is we provide a fire sprinkler system that further reduces the ability for fire to spread. So this is slowing down any increase in danger and extending the amount of time that rescue personnel have to help people that may need help. Second aspect to that is, according to the basic building code, we are required to provide 2 stairs out of the building in addition to any elevators. We have that. In conversations with the fire department, we are looking at adding a third stair, full height in the middle of the building to enhance fire and life safety personnel's ability to protect people in this building. And yes, there will be a generator on the project. Its purpose is to provide power to exit corridors and to an elevator in case of an emergency, so that it can be used for exiting in case of an emergency. An apartment building like this is not the same as a typical public use building where the elevators are not designed for emergency use. We are specifically adding the elevator for that purpose. That is one elevator. Yes, it will have testing done to it. That does generate noise. That is an intermittent thing. But the remaining comments, while, like you said, I understand and respect people have concerns and do not want the project, they don't seem to be, from what I wrote, specific to the height or parking spaces. So pending further questions from you, that's what I wanted to respond to.
Did you do any, I know when we, in the past, when we've had applications for projects that involved structures or things that were going to be higher than what the normal average is in the neighborhood, that the applicant was able to provide us with some drawings or enhanced photos that would show what the building would look like from, I can't think of the.
Whitlock?
I know Whitlock and Carl Sam.
Yeah, we have not generated those images. Frankly, from experience, it is an incredibly challenging image to generate in any truthful way that does not look like we are trying to obfuscate the truth, because even in wintertime, where the leaves do not have trees, our building is purposely designed to be at the closest point. If you can pull that drawing up. This closest point of the building is still 75 feet away from the nearest property line, which is another 100 or so feet away from the street. And then we're rapidly going farther away. No matter where we take that picture, yeah, the building is back there. You will see it. People living there, it will change their experience, but it is, to your point, an allowed use on that. So whether or not someone's experience changes over time is different than the matter in question in terms of height. And some of those trees are quite mature and are quite tall enough and will be as high or higher than the building. Many of them are not, and the building will be higher than some. We feel that this building will sit back in those trees, and it'll be something that is back there. It's not in the foreground of anyone's view.
Are you clearing trees?
There are trees being cleared. Right now, the wooded area sort of follows roughly a line like I'm drawing. So the eastern wing has some trees to clear, and in the south, to do some access, there are trees to clear. We've had our landscape architects going out to look at what those trees are and flagging ones that we are seeing as healthy specimen species, maples and oaks and things that are good quality trees that are healthy that we want to try to keep. A lot of the trees that are there are, what is common in our area is large weeds that grow very fast and that are there for several years, and then they get old and they fall down. And they get cleared all the time for lots of projects, but we are looking for which ones we can possibly keep, specifically as many as we can, as close to the property lines as we can, and then as many as we can in and around our parking areas as we can.
Now, the other question that was raised was about locating the access, and I'm assuming it would be an access drive, not a road. Is that a fair assumption?
Which access are you talking
From
about?
Culver Road?
Yes,
at
to
the
Culver
south
Road,
end.
this would be a private access drive.
So it would not be a public road that's going to be used for access to whatever might come between this building and Culver Road? Is that correct?
As has been clearly stated, and as is fact, the design of that is not ours. It is not our property, so we do not know. It is entirely likely that that property would take advantage of this access drive, but we do not know that one way or the other.
Well, are you building it to handle? Is it the plan to build it to handle two-way traffic on a continuous basis, or is it designed like a private drive into a private facility that, would be?
Right.
It'd be done differently because it's only going to be used intermittently as opposed to continuously?
I think, and maybe you're the right person to answer this, civil engineer.
The road's designed for a 24-foot width road, like would be any other town road. So it's used, we wouldn't want to make it much smaller than that for access purposes. That was one of the complaints why we couldn't use Whitlock Road, was because it was too skinny. So we made the road 24 feet wide, which is standard for two-way traffic, and we're going to provide lighting on it. So could it be used for more traffic than just ours? Yes, it could be.
And in conjunction with development of the front parcels, I mean, is this going to be completed before, or, I mean, is it possible, I mean, you're showing it at the south end of the property, and I'm
East
thinking,
end,
what
east
about the
end.
north end?
East end of the property?
No, I'm talking about the access road.
Oh, the access road?
Yeah.
You're saying would that be built first?
Well, I would assume that that's what you're gonna build first, because that's how you're
Correct.
gonna get all
Well,
your stuff in.
I
to
didn't
build-
understand your
build the
question,
building.
I'm sorry.
My
Can-
question was, why does it have to be at the south end as opposed to the north end? And I realize that that doesn't have an impact on what's in front of us, but we've got people here who are looking for some kind of answers that they apparently haven't gotten elsewhere. And although it's not something that's tied into what's before us, if we can get those answers for them, I have no problem doing that.
We made the access there because of the connection of where the county wants the driveway to be off Culver. They want it at the south end, furthest away from the intersection with 104. So that's where we put it. It also uses the least amount of land. If we were to do it, have the driveway at the south end, we would have to build a road going north and then a road going east, and it would use up more of the unknown it would use up more of the property that developer's trying to use for another purpose.
Well, I meant coming into Culver from the north end. So it's
Right.
the county that said,
The county's forcing us to
whatever
tie into the
access is
south end.
going into this land other than what directly accesses Culver Road, we want to go here.
They want it there, yes.
And that's the county
Monroe County DOT.
Department of Transportation. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. Can you address this? Usually snow removal is in empty parking spaces or whatever,
Yep.
which reduces the parking spaces. Can you address the issue of snow removal? And where is the snow gonna go? What's your plan to maintain that 68% if it's allowed? And how do you plan on not blocking the access that the resident raised earlier?
Well, we're planning on providing snow storage areas that we've identified on our site plan that we submitted to the planning board. There's areas around the site that are green today that we would store snow. It'd be back in this corner here.
I can't see.
Could be over in this corner here.
He's indicating the northwest corner of the property.
I didn't see where you pointed.
Yeah, it's basically here. And somewhere over in this area here, we can store snow. There's areas,
Lower part, could you hold it up and point it to the people who are here?
I'm not quite sure what this has to do with height or parking.
It doesn't, but I'm trying to ask,
but if we were to build
give as much
160
information.
Spaces, there'd be a lot more parking, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Can you wait for the microphone so people can hear on TV? If you don't talk to the mic, it doesn't pick up on TV.
So we're gonna store snow over here on this edge, on the western edge. And we have snow storage here on this edge here. There's not a lot of parking, so there's not a lot of snow. In terms of the driveway, fire access, we will have to plow that because it needs to be used in the wintertime, and that'll be stored to the sides of the road.
So there's not going to be any loss of parking spaces by snow removal?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the pond is designed to drain away, so there's no storage of water. So there will be no mosquitoes.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to this matter, and the board will be in recess until 5 minutes after 8.
hope you enjoyed this presentation.
See the applicant for Double Ice Lane here. So we will take up the Culver Road application first, since the applicant for Double Ice Lane has left. Now, with the packet and then again on the table tonight was a short environmental assessment form. Terry, can you help us with this? My understanding is that although the town board reviewed it, they were not lead agency, so every board has to do the same thing, correct?
So this is an unlisted action under seeker, and so the zoning board is adopting its own declaration of, making its own determination of significance for the purposes of seeker in advance of rendering any decision. And so as the zoning board looks at the potential project, it needs to do its own, take its own hard look at the potential impacts associated with the action before it. And so the proposed action involves area variances for height and for parking associated with the development of an 82,000 square foot senior residential living facility. The specific variances include a 9-foot height variance, with a proposed building height of 39 feet in a district that allows 30, and then a proposed 68 parking spaces where the code requires 162 per unit. And it's important to note that this particular zoning district doesn't distinguish between unit types, whereas some other districts now distinguish between multifamily and senior multifamily. It's an unlisted action, and so in looking at potential impacts, you look at a few different things related to those actions that this board's considering. So one would be impact to land use and community character. The proposed 3-story building height on the site requires relief from the zoning board. However, the size of the lot and the location of the building in relationship to the surrounding development minimizes the potential for large or significant adverse impacts associated with the proposed building height. The closest point of the building side wing is 73 feet from the property line, which is almost double the height of the proposed building. Existing trees will be kept and new plantings will be added to maintain and enhance or a visual buffer to the property. Any building mounted lighting will be dark sky compliant. And so it wasn't determined that there are any large or moderate adverse impacts associated with the height as far as it goes, it compares to community character or the height of the building. Potential impact to land, the proposed development of the senior housing project is going to be required to prepare a stormwater pollution prevention plan under New York State regulation. That's called a SWIP for short. That's something that's prepared in advance of the building permit. However, that helps to ensure that the project's going to conform with stormwater regulations and minimize potential negative impacts to land. Additionally, the proposed height of the building means, although it does need a relief from the code, results in less disturbance of physical land. Additionally, the parking, which is being proposed, less pavement, less impervious surface. So those two things are actually reducing or mitigating the potential impacts to land associated with development on a parcel this size. When we look at the, I included it as part of the analysis for this board, just because the height speaks to the side. The height is directly related to the number of units. So we looked at the potential impacts to traffic. The total build out is going to be 80 senior residential units. The type of housing that's being proposed senior is associated with a much lower traffic impact and trip generation. And that was documented in the application and materials that the applicant submitted to the town as part of the rezoning application, but I reiterated as part of the analysis of potential impact. And New York State DEC provides us with a guideline of what what number of trip generation rise to the level of being a large or moderate impact that requires further study or additional mitigation, and this comes nowhere close. Based on that information and that analysis, this was not deemed to be a potential large or moderate impact as well. We look at utilities and energy use, again, somewhat related to the height factor, and then potential impacts to community resources, during site plan review, issues related to the location of the building or height, and any issues identified or concerns identified by the fire marshal or fire departments will be addressed and can be mitigated. And so while there may be impacts, there's certainly opportunities to mitigate them, both with the building design. There is fire sprinkler. The building has no choice but to meet New York State Building Code requirements for fire separation, fire protection. And there may be other design accommodations that can be made to help improve any potential for response by emergency services. So in looking at this from a seeker standpoint, there isn't anything that's being proposed here that rises to the level of being a moderate or large adverse impact for the purposes of seeker, and so therefore recommending a negative declaration for this board.
Thank you. So, as Ms. Ivers indicated, this is an unlisted action for purposes of seeker. Does somebody wish to make a motion with respect to a negative declaration?
I make a motion with a negative declaration for seeker impact.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, no one is absent. The board is fully constituted. Someone wish to make a motion with respect, and we're going to divide this into 2 applications. The first application with respect to the parking, and the second with respect to the height. So does someone wish to make a motion with respect to the parking, the variance that's requested to allow for 68 spaces instead of 160? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a stab at making a motion. I would move that the application to allow for 68 parking spaces be approved with the following findings of fact. The reduction in the number of parking spaces will actually have a positive change in that it will reduce the impervious area, the amount of pavement that's going to be necessary, which would interfere with the natural process of rain and discharge of stormwater. The alternatives that would not require a variance would be a much larger parking area and a much larger number of spaces than the documentation indicates would be needed, and so those spaces would sit there unused and take up what otherwise would be green space. It is a substantial request. I don't see how you could characterize it as other than substantial. The code would require 160 spaces, and this is less than half of that. But the nature of the facility and the occupants demonstrates that in actuality there are going to be more spaces than would reasonably be anticipated to be needed. The reduction in the number of parking spaces will actually have a positive effect on physical or environmental conditions for the same reason of the lack of greater impervious surface and less number of cars. This is a self-created situation in that the applicant is constructing it in this fashion and for this population and therefore is seeking to reduce the number of spaces, but the fact that it's self-created is not a barrier to granting of the variance. Does someone wish to second that motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded it? Oh, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, the only discussion I have is that, perhaps a recommendation, that can go back to the, board to make a law describing, what you said earlier in your seeker for senior housing use and regular use, or do everything in that works?
So I think that that's an item that you can raise, but probably doesn't need to be connected to this particular item.
Or
And I will.
just in general outside of this item?
Yes, and I will share with you that that the parking standards currently existing in our code have not been updated in a very long time. And as we revisit zoning district updates, that's one of the things that we'll be looking at for sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Parking standards, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. We are fully constituted. Next item is the application for the height variance. Again, this is an unlisted action for seeker purposes. And the board has already made a negative declaration. Excuse me a minute while I filled in the information on the wrong form. All right, does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to the application for the height variance of 39 feet instead of 30 feet? All right, once again, I'll propose that we grant the variance with the following findings of fact. The possible change to the neighborhood character as a result of the increase in 9 feet is not significant as a factor in the request for 39 feet instead of 30 feet, as the applicant has testified. In order to stay within the zoning regulation of 30 feet, it would require the building to be spread out in a much larger footprint, greater impact on the environment, greater impact on the character of the neighborhood, and would not be viable absent lower than the 80 units that is proposed. The alternatives that don't require a variance are that the building would have to be spread out in order to have 80 units within two stories, and that would require a greater utilization of the available land and would reduce the green space, would also probably reduce the, it would increase the density of the use. It is a substantial request in that it's a third of the, almost a third of what the code requires. But again, it's as the applicant testified, it is needed in order to accommodate the 3 stories as opposed to 2, and in order to make the project financially viable. The effect on physical or environmental conditions, if granted, yes, it will have an effect. It's not an effect that's going to be of such significance that the variance should be denied. The situation is self-created to the extent that the applicant wishes to make a improvement of the property. that is consistent with the zoning that's been approved for the site. But the fact that it's self-created is not an impediment to the granting of the variance. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I do have concerns about the height, specifically because of the character of the neighborhood, the concerns that were raised by residents of the neighborhood, given that a lot of the buildings or houses, I should say, in the neighborhood are ranches or split levels. It seems out of character with the type of buildings that are in the neighborhood. And as you mentioned, it is a substantial height variance. And given that that's out of character with what's currently in the neighborhood, I do have concerns about specifically the height of the building.
My belief is that the height of the building, with the distance away from the property line, I'm just running it, and I could be wrong, but looking at the property, looking at where the property line is, I don't think would have a substantial impact on the residents or the town. And again, by spreading the building out, it would have a larger impact, as you stated earlier. So if the homeowner, from what I hear, is maintaining the vegetation, increasing more to separate that visual effect between the existing neighborhood and the proposed project, I don't think that height would have any substantial difference.
I mean, I drove by there Saturday and went down all the side streets and could not see into the property where this building was going to be built from the trees and other vegetation that was surrounding the property, and then driving into the site and going back to where the building's proposed, was unable to clearly see any of the neighboring properties. So even at this time of the year, when it's at minimal foliage, it seemed to be fairly well screened, and the applicant testified that they're not going to be significantly impacting that in terms of the building, because it's all on the edge of the property.
I didn't drive down the side streets, but I did drive into the property, and I didn't see where it would have been substantial.
The property across the street, the medical park, is any, I know it's on the other side of the road, but what do the buildings look like in there? The medical from Wambox, on the other side, are they tall buildings, or are they are?
I think they're all two-story.
They're all two-story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the LaCroix apartments behind them, I think, are three-story. I might be mistaken about that, but I think they're three. I'm not sure. Do you know how many stories the LaCroix apartments are, Carrie?
I would love to be able to tell you with certainty that I do, but I would hate to be wrong and be doing it on TV.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
And one thing I'd like to add is, in addition to those 5 factors that I know you're all familiar with, one of the sort of overall concerns or factors that you should be considering is whether the benefit to the applicant outweighs any detriment or harm that would be caused to the neighborhood. And so you have to look at how is this going to impact the applicant, and whether denying this variance is going to prevent the applicant from using their property in a way that's allowed under the code. And as we've already discussed, multifamily is allowed in the R5 district. So you can't just consider the character of the neighborhood and an undesirable change in a vacuum. You have to weigh that against the benefit to the applicant.
That's the ones over here, across the street, two-story.
Any other discussion, or all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and the board is fully constituted, nobody is absent.
I didn't give it to you, did I? What's that? I didn't give you the cough, did I? No, that was the water, actually.
Then the next item on the agenda for consideration by the board is the Double Bice Lane application. This is a type 2 action for seeker purposes, correct?
That is correct. It is type 2 for the purposes of seeker. Because the structure is under, it's an accessory structure in a commercially zoned, or in this case, manufacturing zone district, and it's under 4,000 square feet.
So, being a type 2 action for seeker purposes, the issue of a declaration is not before us. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I'd like to move that we approve this application.
With findings?
Yeah, fine. I don't believe it's going to be a change in the neighborhood, to the character of the neighborhood. The small storage shed actually joins a commercial area, but it's going to be screened from the residential area. The alternatives requiring a variance obviously is to not build it, but they need the room to expand the operations of the facility. I don't believe it's a very substantial request. It's small compared to the size of the property. There should not be any effect on the physical environmental conditions because it's pretty much a totally impervious area over there to begin with. It is self-created, obviously, because they're asking for it, and so based on that, I think we can approve it.
Second.
Tim. All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, nobody is absent, the board is fully constituted. Before we conclude the meeting, everyone with their packet should have received the draft of the minutes from the meeting held on December 2nd, 2019. Did everyone have a chance to review those? Does anybody have any additions or corrections? Seeing none, I would make a motion that we approve the draft of the minutes for our meeting on December 2nd, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Oh,
Aye.
first,
Aye.
I'm sorry, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Brad did. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
You abstain.
I was absent.
You were absent, yes. Okay, so the motion carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, 1 abstention. There are nobody absent. The board remains fully constituted. And with that, Happy New Year to everyone, and we are adjourned.
Wings.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Irondequoit Zoning Board on ICAT Government Access. We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Irondequoit Zoning Board on ICAT Government Access.